So the last part is still only overriding, and we'll say how to go about overriding. We have two methods here, two classes here. The first class is a class A, which has a method, and the class A we have the extension of A. The class A has the same definition of the method code I will be getting overridden. This is what we've already seen. Now in the last class I've already told you that if at all you want to access the parent class, use the parent followed by the double colon. This is the scope resolution that is used in order to access the parent methods or the parent properties. Now here you will notice that we have a class, and this is an example for overriding without the use of the parent figure. We have a class A here and we have a class B here, and I'm creating two objects. If I try to call the two of the object A, then it's going to call this method, whereas if I try to call the two of the object of type B, it's going to call the method of B. This is how it's going to go. Now here is an example for using a parent. Now we have an object that is a class B that exists in class A, and if I want to call the constructor of class A, because B is an extension of A, and if I want to call this constructor, then I will have to say parent underscore construct. This is going to call the construct of the parent, then it's going to call anything within the current class. So that's one place wherein you use the parent. The next one that was discussed in the last class was the final. Now, when you use the final, if it is used in front of a method, you cannot override a method. If it is used in front of a class, then the class cannot be extended. You are familiar with this. Now, I have a class here with a function, and one of the functions is marked as the final. And this function, even though it is private, it is not possible for the others to override it. One of the reasons why we are using a final is to prevent somebody from actually overriding the private methods of our class. You may require some methods which are specific, the housekeeping method within the class that is required for the functioning of the class. And if by mistake, if somebody who has derived their class out of your class, if they go and override your private methods, then what will happen is the working will be unpredictable. So what is usually done is we put a final in front of our keyword, our methods, in order to prevent others from overriding the final. Now here you have a final class, and keep any of the child class try to extend out of this final class, they will get an exception saying that it is not possible for them to do that. The next one is an abstract class. In the details are being given to you. An abstract class is nothing but a class wherein the method do not need to have the body of the implementation. You just create a class, you declare the heading of the signature of the method. That's only that is required. It does not mean to say that an abstract class cannot have the full implementation. It's not really required, but you can have it. If at all you want to use an abstract class, it must be inherited. So abstract class on its own cannot be used because its methods are incomplete. So you will have to go for the inheritance, and the child class which extends of this particular abstract class has to have has to override or has to implement the methods of the abstract classes. And the other one is if the abstract class has a protected scope, you cannot make that method as the public. It is not possible. It is true in other programming languages also. You cannot change the visibility of the method. If the extra class says that this is a public method, it's the end of it. It's a public method. If it says it's a protected, it is protected. You cannot override the visibility of it because it's going to create a security issues in the primary classes. So here I have an example where I have an extra class. The name of the class will not be exact. That this name will not make it an exact. What makes it an exact is the keyword exact and exact. There are two methods for the exact, and there is one method which is non-exact. It's a full method, and if a class extends out of this, it is supposed to override both of them. And you notice that this is protected here and it is protected here. And in the extend class, you call this as a fact. You don't have to call anything as a fact in the overridden class. So there are two classes are there, and the usual thing you can call override it and you can call the method on it. It's not something which you are not aware of. The next one is the interfaces. What's the difference between a extend class and interface? Is in interface all the methods are extend. So because all the methods are extend, you don't have to put the keyword extend when you declare the method in the interface. It is assumed that whatever you write is the extend. And very important thing, an interface cannot have any properties. That is what I told you in the last class. Can you declare a property within the interface? It's not possible. You will not allow you to have the properties, and very important thing, you cannot have a private method. You cannot declare a method as private because then it is not possible for anybody else to override those methods. The essential difference between interface and a class is when it comes to class, a PHP class can override or extend only one base class. So that means you don't have a multiple inheritance. You cannot have more than one implementation of a given class. In other words, you cannot inherit a class from more than one base class. It's not allowed. When it comes to the interface, it is allowed. You can have more than one, or a class can implement more than one interface. Let's recall what we have studied already in the previous classes, and that is the interface. Interface is a contract. Always remember that way. All the classes that implement the interface have to follow the method that are there in it. Okay? And the method signature must be same. The last class I told you. When we talk about the signature, if at all you want to override something, the method must look exactly same as that in the interface. And the method which I declare in the public interface, whether you say or not, it is assumed to be public because it has to be overridden. And the next one is when you use it within your class, you don't use the word extend, you use the word intend. And the class can implement more than one interface, and the interface can be used in the type hinting. Now I'll tell you what is the type hinting in the later slide. Why do we require that thing? A simple example over here, I have a high template with two functions here. If you don't declare it, it is submissive. You have the two methods here, and getter and sender. I have a class template that implements iTemplate, and because it is implementing this, these two methods must be overridden. So I have one public get method and one public send method, which is the overridden of this and the other. What these methods are going to use of no use to us, but only what is required as of now is this method is overridden here, this method is overridden here. When all you implement the interface, you have to do that. What's the reason why we have to use the interface? The main reason is we can use it in the polymorphism. The next one is overloading. When we talk about PHP provides the overloading by the use of magical methods. The all the magic methods are there because they can provide the overloading. There are few things you must understand. Whenever you are trying to use the magic method, you can use the magic method to either activate the members which are not declared. So if you have not declared a method and if you want to use it, you use the magic method, or if you are not declared a property and if you want to use it, you can use that. And very important thing, none of the magic methods are directly called except in the case of a constructor and destructor that we are using. Directly you cannot activate them outside the through a object. You cannot force the magical method to be activated by just calling their name and using them like a method. When you do something with the objects, the PHP automatically will call the magic method. These are the magic methods that we usually use. We use the getter and setter, and we use the set and unset. Each set is used to verify whether it is there or not. Remember, this is the one that the identical function is there that we are using. This is the magic method within your class. This is underscore each set and underscore unset. This is used to verify whether that particular variable exists or not. We use the set method to automatically create a object, automatically create a property, and when the property is there or not, because if you can use to create any property, we can cross verify whether a particular property exists or whether it is there or not. When we talk about overloading, one important thing that you must understand, the overloading of PHP is different from the other programming languages. Whenever we say overloading, we just mean to say that the members have different signature. That's the use of thing. Any programming language you take it. Overloading just means to say that there are two methods, the signature of which is different. One takes 2 parameters, some takes 3 parameters, so it's all over. Whereas when it comes to the PHP, the parameters of the argument of the method cannot decide whether it is overridden or not. Now, in order for us to overload a method, we use call and constant. Call is used for the instance methods. Call static is used for static methods. If you want to associate a method with the class itself and you want to do it dynamically, in other words, you want to add a dynamic method to the classes, then use call static. If you want to add it to the objects, then you use the call. Now, call is a magical method. The first argument for the call is the name of the method, and the second argument is the list of parameters that are supplied to it. Let's look at it in action. So we have the call, that's the magic method. The first parameter is the name, and the second one is the argument. Now, this is to say the same thing, only difference is this is a static method. If you want to create a static method, use call static. If you want to create a runtime, that is the object method, you can use the call. And here you will notice that I create an instance of this class, new method, and then I try to call a method called as run test. You notice that the run test does not exist in the definition of the class. This method is not there in the definition of the class. But when you call this method, what is going to happen is the PHP automatically calls this method. If the PHP checks and verifies whether this method exists in a given class. If it is not there in the class, and if you have declared this underscore call, automatically it will call this underscore call and pass the argument to it. Now in this case, the name of the when it calls this name, when it calls this call, the name will be the run test. So the argument is whatever argument that you are trying to call. So it just calls this method, and you are supposed to do anything over here. Either you throw an exception, or you try to call some other method, or then show a message to the user. It's up to you what you are going to do over here. So in the last one, I try to call the same method, but this time I'm calling it like a static. If you notice here, in this case I'm calling it to an object of the class, whereas here I'm trying to call like a static method. When I call it like a static, this is going to call the remaining part is same. It passes the name of the method behind passes the argument. So this is how it's going to go over there, and this is how we create a polymorphism. Now, when we say polymorphism, many forms. So that means to say that dynamically you can add additional methods, provided you take care of adding the methods here. This method was not there in the definition of the class or in the blueprint, but you were able to add it to the definition at runtime by using this underscore call. That's the main use of this call method. You can add additional methods, or you can add static method to your class. So this is how the class behaves differently in different scenario, and this is the main reason why we go. This is the main reason how we use the polymorphism. This is again one more example. When I have a personal class and I have a column here, the only difference is I throw an exception for a method which is not declared in the customer response. So in this case, I try to say set name and I try to pass the argument. When I call the set name, it is not there in the definition of the class. Immediately this method is called and the name set name is passed here. And whatever arguments that you are passing will be passed as the argument. But only thing that it does is it throws an exception saying that that method is not declared. Usually we do that thing so that the method can be handled. The next one is the instance of operator. This operator exists in almost all programming languages and it has the same meaning as that of the other programming language. Instance of is used to verify whether a given object is an instance of a class. For example, I have two classes here, my class and not my class, and I can check whether the object that is created is a instance of something. So I can say is A, if you notice A is an instance of my class, I can say is A an instance of my class, or I can say is A an instance of not my class or something. This is used to verify whether a given object is of type of a given class. The next one is is a. What's the difference between is a and instance of? Instance of is actually an operator, whereas is a is a method. Both of them does the same thing. So this is also used to verify whether a given object is of type class, but this is a method, whereas the other one is an operator. So what's the difference? If you try to use it, the overhead is a bit more because it's a method. Method invocation will work. That's an operator that will straightforward and fine. So I have a object factory here. I create an object of visit factory and I can anytime verify whether is a this object is outside visit factory. So is a first is the name of the object. Second one is the name of the class or an interface that you want to verify it is. Let's look at the next one, and that is the polymorphism. What is a polymorphism? Polymorphism is derived from the two words poly and morph. Poly refers to many and morph is the form. So polymorphism is many forms. It means to say that a object or a given entity can have different forms. What's the meaning of saying different forms? It can have the different properties, or it can behave in a different way at different scenarios. Okay. Now, in the same, whenever you use the programming language, the polymorphism is you declare a method and say that this method takes 2 parameters. You declare the same method and say this takes 3 parameters. So there is the same method, but it behaves differently. Sometimes it takes 2 parameters, sometimes it takes 3 parameters. That means there are many forms of the same method, and that is one form of polymorphism. And you might be very familiar with this concept. There are two types of polymorphisms out there. One is the static polymorphism, the other one is the dynamic polymorphism. Static polymorphism is a situation wherein there are different forms, but at compile time, the compiler is able to recognize the form and it is able to fix the form. So when you write the code, if the compiler is able to guess that this is the form you are using, then that is called as static. So it is the type of object or the type of method is already decided at the compiler. What is dynamic is the compiler is not able to figure out what is the type. In that case, at runtime, the runtime has to decide whether which form of the object has to be used. And that is called as the dynamic polymorphism. When you use the C programming language and when you use the overloading, that is a method with a different number of arguments, all the time you are using this static. The reason is you might have created a method called as add that takes 2 parameters, you might have created an add that takes 3 parameters, and you might have created an add that takes 4 parameters. But when you call that method, if you supply 2 parameters, that means the compiler knows that I have to call that method with the 2 parameters. If you supply 4 parameters, the compiler itself knows that I am supposed to call a method with the 4 parameters. That means even though there is a polymorphism, but the decision is directly taken at compile time. And that is the static. What is dynamic is you try to create a method and then pass a parameter. Now what is passed for the method depends at the runtime and the compiler is not able to decide. That is what is the dynamic polymorphism, and most of you are familiar with that dynamic polymorphism. And what is dynamic polymorphism is when a decision has to be taken, so which method has to be invoked at runtime. Okay. Now, whenever you think of using the PHP, one important thing that you must understand is in PHP it is not possible for you to do this method polymorphism. You can't have a method variation in the method signature. I have already told you. You can create a method that does not take a parameter but still supply parameters to it. There is no error, and you can figure out how many arguments are there and get the values. So, if you declare a method that takes 2 parameters and if you call it and supply 4 parameters, even though you have not declared a method that takes 4 parameters, it will work. It will automatically work because PHP, I have already told you, the number of arguments are not meant for the signature, or they are not counted when it is using the signature. Now let's come back to the type hinting. Type hinting is a way in which you tell the interpreter that I expect you to use a specific type. For example, I expect you to use an object of this type, or an interface of this type, or an array of this type. Okay. Now, type hinting is not there for the scalar type. So you can't tell the interpreter that I expect you to accept only integer or only string or this kind of thing. You can only use it for the object interface. Say that non-scalar. Now, what's the meaning of saying type hinting? Now, you can look at here. Whenever you created a method or a function, you were not specifying the type. For example, if this would be student and yesterday, student is the name of the class and yesterday is the variable. Or it could be employee, like how you write it in the Java and other programming languages. You specify int x, int y, or float z and something of that type. So data type followed by the argument. So this is called as type hinting. In PHP, there is no data type, but you can use this one to restrict the interpreter from accepting very different values. So this is how you can tell the interpreter that I expect you to take only an object of other class. If somebody supplies a student here, do not accept it because I expect the data type to be other class. Or here you are saying that I expect the data type to be array. Do not accept just the integer float or array, accept only array here. Now this is very different. and you have not used it in the other when you created the method. Most of the time you just type the name of the person and supply the number of arguments. However, you can use the data type here to restrict it. Now this is how we create the polymorphism. So let's look at a general example of the polymorphism. This is almost in all object-oriented classes, and that is I have a shape, and I create a square, and I can create a circle, and so on and so forth. There is an interface called as a shape, and shape has a function get area, and how we get the area depends on the actual shape. So we know that every shape has an area. So I create a class called as square that implements the shape. Because I said it implements the shape, I have to override the get area. Square has a width and a height here, and there is a constructor that does that thing, and I am trying to override this object method get area, and I use this to get the the object capture the area of the square, and then I have the square here. The same way, I have a circle here. Circle has the radius, and there is a constructor that takes the radius, and there is this get area method that takes the square as the area. Now, here I have at the bottom I have a function called as calculate area. You notice over here, calculate area takes a object of time shape. So I'm saying that accept only something that is of this interface. So any object that implements this interface, accept it. So in other words, I cannot supply a student here, I cannot supply an array here, I cannot supply an integer here because I have given a right name saying that it is this shape. Now because of this, we can get the polymorphism. How do I get this polymorphism? Because of that method, I can say I can create a variable and create a square, I can create a circle. Now if you look at this particular method over here, what it does is it uses that shape interface and it calls the get area of the interface. So if you just go back here, it just tries to invoke this method, which is a part of the interface. It cannot call this method, nor it can call any other method within this square because the interface has only one method inside it. So this particular function, if you look here, this function calls the get area of the interface. So what is supplied to this is not known to the interface at the compile time or at the time when you write the code. The compiler cannot decide what can be passed here because the circle can be passed, a square can be passed, a rectangle can be passed, a polygon can be passed, anything can be passed. So that is what is called as dynamic polymorphism. So the compiler is in no way it is able to guess what can be called over here. So this is a perfect example for dynamic polymorphism. And when I supply a square here, you know that this is going to be a square. Anything can come here. So this variable could be a circle. Because it is written as square, it doesn't mean that it has to be a square. So when I supply a square, it's going to call the square method, that is the get area of the square method, because the square method implements the area in a different way. Whereas when you supply the circle here, it's going to call the get area of the circle. This is what is the polymorphism. The next one is the auto load. What's the use of this auto load? We have not done too much of object-oriented programming, but I have told you that whenever you create a class, it is better you create a class and save it in a separate file. So that you don't get confused. Like other programming language, where you have to create one file for a given class, like your Java and other programming language. That's all you want to create a class. The file name must be the same as that of the class. The PHP, such a restriction is not there, but it's a good practice to have the classes with the same name, the files with the same name as of that of the class. But only problem is when you have the file name with the class, they have to be included with your code. And I have told you there are four different functions: include, required, include one, and required ones. These four methods can be used. Now, usually what happens is either whenever you try to call a particular class, if those include files are not there in your code, the program crashes down, and the PHP interpreter will say that I could not get the class. If you want the interpreter to automatically load a class, suppose if I say use yesterday equal to new student, and if the student is written on a different file called as student.php, and I want the interpreter to automatically load that class, then I can say autoload. The autoload will automatically load a class when it is required. It can be a class or it could be a interface. So how do I do that? The way in which I do it is I use this method, and then I write how it has to be included. So underscore autoload, name of the class. If you are using the general convention, then you start the name of the class dot php. The file is stored with the name of the class along with the file extension dot php. Whenever somebody calls, like whenever somebody say my class 1, that my class 1 is not included, automatically this is called and this will included. If you student, if you write yesterday is equal to new student.php, if it is not already included, automatically included. That's the use of autoload. And again, if it is not loaded and if you feel that if it is not loaded, the program should not continue, you can do this one. Here, what is done is instead of loading, you just throw an exception saying that the class was not included for some reason, and I'm not going ahead with the code. The other part is the cloning. Cloning is the way in which you duplicate an object. Now, you are already familiar with this idea of cloning was introduced in the C++ classes, wherein when you try to make a reference, there are two variables. Ordinary scalar variable a and b. If we say $a is equal to $b, that means a copy of it is PHP. Both of them will be pointing to a separate memory location. A copy is what will happen if you do the same thing with the two objects. If you do this object 2 is equal to object 1, both of them will point to the same object. So only references are copied. This is already familiar with it. Now, sometimes if you want a copy, if it is a reference, what will happen is, if any one of them makes a change, it will automatically highlighted from the others. Let's look at that in a simple example. Here I have a customer, and I have a set and get name, the ordinary one. You set a name and you get a name, and I create a new customer, and I supply the set a name as soon as this customer. And then I make a copy of this customer to S2. In the S2, I set the name as Vishal. Now, if I print the get name over here, because when I make a copy, both of them will be pointing to the same object. So this it is not like a valueless copy. So yes, C1 and C2 are now pointing to the same object. Any one of them makes a change to the value within the object, it is automatically highlighted. So here, after making a reference copy here, C2 changes the name from Sunil to Vishal. If you use the C1 and get the name, or if you use C2 and get the name, both of them will be Vishal because both of them are pointing to the same object. And this is one of the problems that you usually encounter whenever you use the objects. So if you assign one object to the other, there won't be automatical copy like your variables of your scalars. If you copy two integers, two copies are generated. If you try to make this one, assign two objects, only references are copied, and when the references are copied, if any one of them makes a change, automatically it is highlighted on the other. What if you don't want that kind of thing? What if you want to have two separate instances? For this, you go for cloning. So cloning makes a exact copy of it, and cloning was supported in the version 5. Most of them, whatever I have discussed, is supported in the version 5.x. If you are using the older version, 4.x version of the PHP, these things will not work. Okay. PHP 5 on its own will perform a shallow copy. What's the meaning of saying shallow copy? Within the object, if you have over here, I have a string here. If it was one more object, instead of this, it was a reference to one more object, then what will happen is this replication will not be done. When I clone it will not clone the other instance of the object. It will only make the cloning of the scalar values, but it will not change the reference objects. So this is the problem. Let's look at that in the actually I think I have one code over here. Now let's look at this particular example here. So I have a private name, I have a function. How do I make it clone? You write a magic method called as clone and then make a replica. How do I make the true copy of it? Just write this function. That is the magic function, underscore clone, and then in the clone you write the technique how you are going to make the copy. Here I want the replica of the customer, so I create an instance of the customer. I then set the name to this new instance and I return the new instance. That means to say that within this class I create a separate object and I transfer all the values to it. So here I have P1 is a customer and it sets the name Sunil, but only difference this time is C2 is clone of C1. Look at the way how it is called. It is written underscore clone, but when it is called, it is just a clone and a other variable. So in this case, what will happen is when you write this clone, automatically this method is called, and this method is going to create a new instance of the same customer and it's going to give it to the C2. Now, if the C2 makes a change to the value, only C2 is affected and C1 is not affected. So if you say C1 get name, it's going to be Sunil. C2 get name, it's going to be this one. So it's going to be it. Okay. Now this is called as bit copying. Now what's the meaning of saying bit copying is if there is a reference to one more object, the replica of that object is also made. Now you have to do it on your own. Shallow copying, what is going to happen is this will be same for both the objects. If you create two objects, the rest of the content may be replicated. You may have a copy of the int value, code value. But if there is a reference object, like a customer, both of them will point to the same one. They will not be reference object, or the object will not be replicated. That is called as shallow copying. Big copying is you go to all the references and then. So here I have a order. An order has a customer and it is that this is a object. Customer is an object of type customer. We have a definition of it on the next page. So it's a object by itself. So I set the order, I get the order, I set the customer, and I get the customer. And I have this clone method that is going to perform the clone. Now this part has nothing, no special things over here because it's the ordinary integer that I'm trying to pass. But when I try to set the customer, what I'm trying to do is I'm making a copy of it. I'm saying this customer is the clone of the customer. That means I make a copy of the customer and then assign it over here. So what it has is not the reference to a customer, as a copy of a customer inside it. Look at how the cloning is done. So before I go to this one, how does this clone work in the customer class? If you go to the customer class over here, customer has a name and get name and set name is there. Clone of the customer is to create a new instance of the customer and you send the name, copy of the name that was set here, you send it back to this customer and return a new copy of the customer. You notice over here, this is the new copy, not the existing copy. I create a new copy, copy all the properties, then send it back to you. So when I try to call here, in the order, if I try to call set customer, it's going to make a copy of that customer and it's going to give it to you. So how do I clone this order? To clone this order, I create a new instance of it. I set the order ID, which is a straightforward one. I try to set the customer equal to clone of this customer. Look at the way it is being done. I'm not saying customer is equal to how it is done over here. So if you notice this one, this is a straightforward way. This is just a copy of order ID to the order ID here, whereas here a copy of the customer is done. That is, because the customer is an object, you create two objects, give one to this side and give the other one with your side. So this is the copy. If this customer again had one more object like address object, you will have to do that thing. That is why it is called as a deep copy. If an object references one more object, go to this object, make a copy of it. If this object has one more reference copy, go to that object, do it. This is called as deep, and I think in C++ you have done this kind of exercise wherein you went deeper and deeper and made a copy and got a perfect replica of this object and used it in some other places. So this is how it is being done. So this is just an example wherein I create a new customer, set the name, set the order, and set a new customer to the order one, and if you clone of it, then start using it. Let's go to the other one, and that is sleep and wake. Now, what is this sleep? Now, we have seen what is serialization in the last class. I told you how the serialization works. Now, serializing is taking the state of the object, pass it to something else. Usually, it is passing directly onto the disk. And in the Java, you might have already encountered the problem. What happens when you stream the content into the disk? When you try to do it, the state, active state of the object is only saved, but the resources that it is using will not be saved. Now, sometimes you may want to use the reference. For example, when you try to stream a content, an object into the database or into a hard disk or into a file or into a network, its connection with the database, if it has a connection with the database, that cannot be streamed. Or if it was using a file reference, it cannot be streamed. The values that it holds, like a customer name, customer address, all these things can be streamed, but there are some things which cannot be streamed. If you feel that some things need not have to be streamed, then you can use the sleep method. Let's look at that sleep method. Now here I have a customer name and I have a credit card, but I do not want to pass that credit card into the, or I don't want to close it into the sleep. So how do I do that? Without the sleep method, if you ask the PHP to serialize it, it will serialize both the names and the credit card number. Suppose if you feel that the credit card number should not be saved or should not be streamed, in that case you can say, you can write a magic method called as save and then specify what needs to be saved. Remember, this method has to return an array that contains the values that need to be saved. In this case, I tell the PHP that I want only the name to be streamed or name to be serialized. I don't want you to serialize the credit card number. So the return value of this method is only the name, that is the name of the private variable. The second variable is not passed. That means if you try to stream this one, what is going to happen is I have an object over here and this credit card number is there. That credit card number will not be serialized. So when I call serialize on this object, that one will not be serialized. Okay, wake up is the exactly opposite of it. What is streamed or what is serialized? When you unserialize it, if you want something to be bad, you can use the wake up. Exactly opposite of that of a serialize. Serialize is sleep is called before serialization. Wake up is called after you unserialize it. Okay. Let's look at a real life kind of example wherein I have the connection, that is the connection to the database, the host name, the username, password, and the database name. Now in the constructor, I get the connection, the host name, username, password, and the database name. I call a method called as connect. This will make a connection, MySQL connect, and it will connect to the database, and it will use this database. And I say MySQL connect DB. So going to connect to the database, and it's going to establish the connection to that particular database in the constructor itself. Now, what will happen if you try to sleep this one? Now, when you sleep or when you stream it, you want the host name, you want the username, you want to have the password, you want to know which is the database. But when you serialize it, what is going to happen is this connection is automatically closed. So when your object is serialized, this connection with the database is lost. The database will disconnect that object from it because it is no longer available. So when you are coming back, if this is unserialized, then what is that you are supposed to do? So when it is woken up, so after unserialization, you re-establish the connection and then use it. So when this object is serialized, all the content will go except the database connection, because when it is coming back, you get all the objects, make a fresh connection to the database. So that is the one. Okay, I'll finish it off with this one. And that is how do you delete an object. To delete an object, you use the unset. If the object goes out of scope, automatically it gets undeleted. One important thing, when you call the unset will delete the object, or unset will call the constructor only if this is the last reference that you are unsetting it. What's the meaning of it? For a given object, more than one pointer can point to a given object. If you call a unset on this object, but if some other references are already there for the given object, this object will not be destroyed. It destroys the object only if the last remaining reference is pulled out. Okay. Now, how do we do that thing? It's a very simple thing. You just say unset name of the object. Now, this is useful in many scenarios wherein you have like you have a very bulky object and you want to just destroy that in order to save the memory. In that case,